Welcome to Memoirs of a White Guy. My name is Luke Kidgel, and I'll be your host for this podcast, which does make sense because this is my podcast, so that's probably who should be hosting it. And what this is the prologue. This is the introduction to my Memoirs of a White Guy, the podcast where I essentially talk about absolutely nothing because I live a very cozy life, free of oppression, and any problem I have is of the first world variety. And so that's essentially what this podcast is about. It's about nothing. It's me living life. Now, I have already recorded the first chapter into this epic tale of my life, and realized that I didn't properly introduce myself or really introduce what the podcast was about. So this is what this is. This is the prologue. Hopefully people listen to this first, because I tried to introduce myself a little bit and just started talking shit immediately, and all of a sudden half an hour passed and I talked way more about Osher Gunsberg than myself, which actually I think is a good ratio, and hopefully it will continue throughout the podcast. But I thought this should just be a bit about me, so you know who's speaking to you about the random shit that I go on to discuss. My name is Luke Kidgel, and I am a comedian. Also, that's using the term comedian very loosely, because I hate it when people of my level say they're a comedian. But what else do you say? I mean, I do comedy, and I talk about that in the podcast, so I won't go on about it now. But I try and make people laugh. That's essentially what I do. Not my job, though, so not technically a comedian. But it sounds way cooler. So that's me. What else? A little bit about myself. I don't have a dog. I don't have herpes. So I'm just going to tell you a bunch of things I don't have, and then you can kind of narrow it down of what I actually do. So I'll just go and list. I don't have pink curtains. So I don't have pink curtains in my bedroom, so you can go and guess. Maybe that kind of narrows it down to what color curtains I do. I also don't have brown curtains, so you should be able to work it out from there. I should probably tell you some stuff that I do have. I have a tiny cock, and that is why I use the term comedian very loosely, because that's not some of my best work. I do stand-up a few times a week around Melbourne. I live in Melbourne. No, actually, I live in Adelaide, but I just drive to Melbourne a few times a week to tell people dick jokes. That was a joke. I live in Melbourne. Jesus Christ, Luke. Good stuff. I bully 13-year-olds online. I didn't used to, actually. I used to just make funny sketches, and now I've just kind of started doing that for fun. I'm assuming that's why you're listening, is because you either know me personally or you watch my videos online. If you're listening because you're like a white supremacist and clicked on the title, I go on to explain that in the first episode, so keep on listening. Point is, that's not what this is about. I should probably explain the title of the podcast. It's essentially, I thought it was a funny title. It's essentially, because I live a pretty cozy first world life, and it's not a racial dig at anyone. It's kind of just a sad stereotype, really, where traditionally and historically it's good to be white. So, and white people generally don't have that many problems, and that's kind of the joke. This podcast is about me talking about the freaking Bachelor, because that's the only thing that bothered me this week. And the rest of my life was sick. But it's not all fun and games, though. I mean, being white, I'll be a bad dancer when I grow up, and I'll probably never make a 100-meter final in the Olympics. So, not all just parties and... well, it is, actually. It's pretty sick. On this podcast as well, I'm hoping to get occasional guests who I think might be interesting, whether they're other comedians, other people who I just think might be interesting to interview, like... I don't know. I've got a couple lined up. I just don't want to say in case they fall through. What else? Yeah, so this podcast, right, is supposed to be kind of like a biography, a recap, a recount of my life. It's a memoir, it's a biography. And in the first episode, I literally tell no anecdotes, not one single story, which is incredibly inaccurate to the title. So I apologize. But actually, I should really say first chapter, because this is technically an audiobook and this is educational. So actually, I'm gonna scrap the term comedian, and from now on, we'll use the term scholar. Hi, my name's Luke. I'm a scholar. I'm a professor in, what have I talked about so far? Professor in herpes and tiny cocks. So that's what I do. And this podcast is every single Monday, so it will give you something to look forward to on a Monday. Hopefully, you've come off a big weekend, you feel a bit dusty. What are you going to do? You're going to sit down and listen to me talk about what's been going on, and hopefully it'll improve your Monday and get your week off to the right start, which is really the goal of what I'm going for. And I'm also going for some giggles because I'm a cool scholar. Another thing I wanted to address is that I would love and really encourage your correspondence on this podcast. I really want this to be like a back and forth. I mean, it's one way from my end, but if you could, it'd be good to just get some correspondence in. You're sending questions. I talk about it a fair bit in the first chapter, which you can listen to after this. I want questions, stories, anything. If you have a question about comedy, would love to answer it. If you have a question about my videos, or if just about my life, or if you have a question regarding your life or a relationship, would love to hear it. If you have a pet donkey and it thinks it's a horse, send it in, because I'll Google it, and I reckon you've got a dumb donkey. But send it in, and we might be able to give it an IQ test, and it turns out it might be a chicken, and you're an idiot, and you think your chicken's a donkey. So anything, send it in, and Luke Kidgel, the comedian / scholar, will do his very best and endeavour to answer your question appropriately. I've also have a megaphone, which will be cool to use throughout the podcast, I think. It comes with a siren. Oh, wake up, it's a Monday. You've got some memoirs of a white guy to be listening to. It can be used as an alarm as well. If you want to request that I put it in, just a random siren at a certain time to just use as a personal alarm in your life, let me know. And the way you can let me know is at Luke. You can email me at luke.kidgel@gmail.com. That is luke.kidgel@gmail.com, or you can message me on my Facebook page. Just search Luke Kidgel, Luke, you idiot, it's in the Bible, Kidgell. That one, fair enough if you didn't know how to spell, although it's probably right in front of you on your phone screen or your laptop, depending on how you're listening. Also, go check out my website. Made a website, so you can listen to this podcast through the website. You might be already on my website listening to the podcast. There's a picture of me making muffins from 2013 on there, so go check that out. Good as bake sesh. That is pretty much all I have to say. I hope you've learned a little bit more about me in this short introduction. I am a comedian, or an aspiring comedian from Melbourne. I love comedy. I'm currently writing my show for the 2017 Melbourne International Comedy Festival, and maybe, hopefully, taking it to other places in Australia as well. So do let me know if you're interested as well. That's one thing I'm very keen on knowing, if people would be keen to see me do what I love most live, which is telling dick jokes to strangers, essentially. That's what most scholars do. That's pretty much it. I hope you enjoy Memoirs of a White Guy. This is the end of the prologue, and I hope you go on to enjoy Chapter 1, The Bachelor. Thank you very much for listening. I'll probably see you in a sec, because you're probably just going to continue listening. Bye. There's no way I'm going to end it like that. That was really creepy, so I'm just going to end it now with bye. Thanks for listening.